So let's now just go through workplace.
The incentive to keep going. Just look at like the problems with like pay discrepancies, things they did to like, for example, with Sheena on Vanderpump Rules. I mean, they would do this thing with Sheena where they periodically every so years, they would like demote her to a friend of and, pay her less per episode because she didn't have enough going on in her life, right? To justify being a main cast member, AKA there's not enough drama going on in your life. Like you need to amp it up a little bit. Maybe next year you'll get, full time again.
Right. So if you're Luann and you get a DUI, you get paid more. But if you're Sheena and you have a boring storyline, you get paid less. So it's the upside down. That doesn't happen in normal workplace conditions.
So it's like something that like Candace Dillard Bassett once said, like the line is always moving, right? So same thing with that. Like, you want to be full-time again? You better have something going on. And that's the thing is like, I don't think they understand anymore. It's like not everybody wants to see a like insane, like dark scandal every week. Like when these shows started, it was like more fun and like, like some light drama, some like stupid shade. Eating a bow off a cake or, you know what I mean? Stupid stuff like that.
Yes.
And now it's like super dark, driving our cars into a house and, it's gotten crazy. And it's, every year it needs to like push the envelope more and more and more.
That's a great point.
Well, it becomes a situation where like, well, yeah. So, I mean, just a kind of final thought on that Sheena thing. Here you have someone who is an OG on the show, like started an integral part of the show. I mean, Sheena was like the backbone of Vanderpump Rules. And here she is like seasons in where she should be at the same pay level as like the other people who are the OGs. But because there were years where she was like demoted, she like was making less than people who have been on the show years fewer than her, So
there's a woman on my show that wants to be back on it. So I won't name her. She's wanted to be back on. She said she'd always go quiet if she left. But she used to say you get punished. Like you're a child. You feel like you were bad. So now you have to sit in the corner. Like you're punished. That's what she would say about it. And she has been punished, but then she's been rewarded. Like it's a little bit of that.
It's insane too, the way that like, it is rewarded, but like, it's such a crazy thing because you have people, and you can speak to this as being someone who was on the show for years. It's like once you've been on for so many years, after several years doing these shows, like most of these women like don't love it anymore. You know what I mean? Because it's really hard. It's really stressful. You do not have peace in your life while you're filming this, while you're in production. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes a point to where you need it though. So like, I mean, case in point, I just did the most recent season of Orange County, which covered all of Shannon Bedore's DUI fallout. And, this woman's like going through one of the hardest periods of her life, clearly not doing well. But she is now facing all these legal problems and all these lawsuits, and she needs the money. And, look, I'll just be honest, Shannon Bedore was not like the most kind person to me. She wasn't the most pleasant person to work with, but I still had immense empathy for her because like she was, from the very beginning, I was like, oh, wow, this woman is in a place where she probably should not be on TV right now. She's really going through a really hard time. She clearly does not want to be doing this, in my opinion. That's what it looked like.
Yes.
But she just has to because she needs it now. And like, so what does Bravo do? They decide to bring in the woman who's dating her ex-boyfriend to come and hang out with all of her girlfriends for the season. You know what I mean? So like,
just to really add it, right, throw over the edge. That's what happens all the time. That's another reason the crew gets beat down. The sound person, the people that people don't think about because you're in the line of fire. It's like, what the fuck are we doing this now? Like, what? I don't want to say that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to sit down with her. Like, you guys are right there. Here's the other thing. Like, this is the thing
about... That's the same thing that happened with Tom Sandoval at that reunion. You know what I mean? Like, stop filming. Like he was yelling at me that day, but I knew it wasn't about me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you're a punching bag. But you also, there's that line where you're just like, yeah, this isn't good for like humanity and my soul and being like a human. Like, but you have no power.
Yeah.
You have no power.
Yeah. I mean, it is insane. And like, I think one of the reasons that I produced, I always produced with a a level of empathy. You know what I mean? I would always try to go into every scene and try to understand what the cast member point of view was, right? So I could properly like tell their story. So I always was very empathetic to how they felt about the situation. And I think that comes from my experience of being on a reality show like this. I was on a show called Fire Island.
Mm-hmm.
It was back in like 2016 that we shot. It's like basically like the Jersey Shore, but it's 6 gay guys living in a share house on Fire Island. And we were shooting that show. I mean, it was during the darkest period of my life. I was about like a year and a half into a serious meth addiction.
Jesus.
I actually was going into the bathroom, turning my mic off, smoking crystal meth, and
my
coming back out
God.
and shooting the show.
Wow.
I literally was that, and I was keeping that a secret from everyone. And I know how fucking hard that is. I know how it feels to be on one of these shows when you're going through a really hard time, when your life is kind of crumbling around you and you're trying to hold it together for the sake of the fact that you're on a television show and you don't want the world to know your problems, like maybe you don't want the world to know your secrets, right?
Which is why you shouldn't go on. Is mental health, substance abuse, emotional abuse, and sobriety, is it exploited on these shows?
Yes.
No discussion.
Yeah. I mean, that's the addiction and the substance abuse kind of storylines are something that always made me a little uneasy. Anytime we were talking about someone's alcoholism or a drug addiction or any of that, it's so fragile and something not to be taken lightly and to be amplified by these shows. I can't imagine trying to like or stay or get sober while being on one of these shows.
So they should not have people on these shows that have proclivity to addiction. Someone who has had any experience with addiction should probably not be on.
I mean, you probably, for your own health and well-being, no, you probably
and
shouldn't.
The network, though.
Maybe.
I'm saying, yeah.
I don't know, because then you have like people who are in recovery who like are living great, healthy, balanced lives that can totally handle something like that. But I don't know. But it is a situation where people, when somebody gets sober on one of these shows, it's always like, oh God, really? Okay. Well, I guess there goes the fun version of that. You know what I mean?
It's a bummer to production when someone's sober.
It's a bummer to production when someone gets sober, for sure. Which is so crazy to think about. And like, it's like someone who like has been through that themselves. Like I have been through that, and just being caught up in that world. That's the commonplace. It's like, oh God, they're getting sober. Okay, and you know what I mean? It's like, no, wait, what? That's good for them. So, I mean, it's like similar to the Karen Huger situation. She got this DUI. She's literally sitting in a jail cell right now. And her alcohol consumption has been something that production has been very well aware of for many years.
Mm-hmm.
There's been many scenes, all cast events like, hey, we got to make sure we get Karen home,
Oh, yeah. That's on every cast. There's ones on ours with drugs. I mean, drugs on our show, like definitely the crew knows who's doing drugs and who's not doing drugs in the workplace. Like, again, but then they hope that it's going to be discussed and brought into scene that other people are going to question that person's drug use.
Yeah. And then when like Karen gets a DUI, everybody acts all like shocked and surprised. Well, I mean, it's like her third one, you know what I mean? And
yes.
How many times have we had to have like somebody drive her home from something, so.
Like same thing. We had a statistic recently that had like 25% of all housewives have had like incarcerations or arrests or, financial illegal activity. And in my friend group, like in anyone's normal circle, you don't have 25% of people that have not just had a brush with the law, but like have been in jail, arrested, have a DUI, have defrauded the government. And then there's also the financial foreclosure. Like, does that speak volumes?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is definitely like an exaggerated version, and it's definitely an amplified world, you know? Yeah, I mean, in what world would you sit there and go have dinner with the woman who's like now engaged to your ex-boyfriend who's suing you? You would never, ever,
Right.
ever do that.
Right.
But because in this situation, you are forced to, you know what I mean?
Well, the networks, so this whole hierarchy and structure is designed like the mafia. This is going to sound crazy. Or like what happens is the network pays talent as independent and crew as independent contractors. And the reason for that is so they're not actual technical employees, because employees or union members have certain guidelines and can go run up the flagpole and say, I just saw someone, break their sobriety or do drugs at work. I just saw someone abuse someone else or verbally abuse someone else or emotionally abuse someone else, which is literally the basis of these shows. So the payment structure is designed so nobody's holding the bag, where the top person is always protected.
Because it's like, oh, well, it's not us, that's the production company.
That's
you
what
know
I'm
I
saying.
mean?
Okay, so
Which
so
is literally interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, but literally there was a article that came out today. It's in like Daily Mail or something. And they had a comment from a Bravo insider, about the video that I posted. And it was basically like, oh, this has nothing to do with Bravo. They have nothing to do with production company hiring. That's all done at a production company level. Like very like flippant, like this has nothing to do with the network. Like, let them eat cake kind of thing.
So the production in each case, whether it's overconsumption or any of these situations, or with us, it was Colombia, Cartagena, where we almost all like died in a boat, incident
Yeah.
where there were only 2 life vests. I mean, there are a lot of things like that are a different version of liability. There's mental health, there's substance
my
abuse,
God,
then
yeah.
there's like danger liability. Like, have you experienced a bit of that too, where you're like, what the hell? This is not safe on trips?
Absolutely. My very first international cash trip. My first cash trip was the first international cash trip I took was for Real Housewives of Atlanta spinoff called Portia's Family Matters. It was about Portia's family. She was getting married, to this guy named Simon, who she's now going through a divorce with. But yeah, we took the cast to Mexico for this healing retreat. How we love a healing retreat on these housewife shows, which are everything but healing, obviously. And we were at a cast dinner where a brawl broke out between her entire family. I found myself having to pry a metal pole out of Portia's hand that she was trying to use to bash another cast member's face in with, who happened to be the father of her child. Yes. During that brawl, I mean, it went on for quite some time. Not only was she swinging this metal pole around, which could have hit anyone at any time.
Wow.
And this was all on the show. You see me grab this pole, wrestle it out of her hand, and take it away.
They aired the crew?
They aired a very watered down version of it. It would go to black. It would occasionally go to black, so they didn't have to show it.
Oh,
I happened to be wearing a Lady Gaga T-shirt at that scene, and then I don't know, someone online was commentary on it, calling me Gaga, but but yeah. So not only is she using this metal pole to try to hit people with, swinging it around crew members with no, not a care in the world about anyone, throwing clay pots, throwing plates that are breaking over cameramen's heads, throwing knives.
Jesus.
There were cameramen that were there at this thing that chimed in on these videos online. Like, I was there. Yes, that happened.
Wow.
But yeah, and so just complete chaos ensued. We were kicked out of the restaurant that we were shooting in. And the police impounded all of our crew vehicles. So all of the crew vehicles were taken. So the entire crew and cast is left scrambling, scattered about the streets of Mexico, wandering around trying to find our way back to our hotel because we were kicked out of our location because of this crazy fight that's ensued. I mean, it was pure chaos,
Wow.
And the next day, Portia didn't even talk about it. We had learned later that day Portia reached out to her entire family and told them, don't talk about this on the show, because if we don't talk about it, they can't air the fight. So obviously that didn't happen.
Oh, wow.
So they eventually started talking about it. But like, then a week or so later, we were back in the States, and I was shooting a scene with her cousin and her aunt or something. And, in the beats, it's like we're talking about what happened on the trip,
Mhm.
And so like I'm telling the cast like, oh, okay, well maybe we should touch base on how we're feeling after everything that happened on the trip. And so they start talking about the stuff that happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, that gets back to Portia, and Portia calls the production company that I'm trying to like coerce them to talking about this, on camera.
So you're really primarily here to represent the crew, I think. I mean, just an entire culture.
Yeah. I'm not living in that environment anymore. And now that I'm out of it, I don't know. It just kind of felt like I just felt like it needed to be said. You know what I mean? These are
get it.
things that have been discussed and complained about since I started working on these shows. The crew's complaining about being overworked, specifically like on those cast trips. Those cast trips are nightmares, you know what I mean? And they're nonstop. And yeah, I was just like, this has been happening for so long. People have been complaining about it for so long. I'm on my way out of here. I have no desire to come back. So like, why not take this opportunity to shed a little light on this like huge issue in this industry and maybe initiate some change as I, see myself out the door.
It's courageous. And I think your voice will be stronger than anyone's because they have nothing you want and you're not asking for anything. So no one's going to come and say this guy has ulterior motives and that you're begrudged. You have a good life. You, like me, I mean, I was the scariest housewife because I became the one who needed it the least. And so I was always willing to walk, and I walked twice.
Well, yeah. And I honestly, too, I think that me doing, me starting my OnlyFans and kind of like taking my power into my own hands, taking my finances into my own hands, and just like taking control of all of that, it does take away, that need to stay loyal to the realm, like you say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like even a thread where you're like wondering if you're burning the last bridge and if it matters, and you're just like, I don't care about that bridge. I'm never going back there. They have nothing I want. It's so powerful.
That had been something I'd been toying with for a while. Like, I've been interested in doing OnlyFans for a while. I have many friends. My boyfriend is a huge content creator.
First of all, I hope a lot of my followers, if any of you are go on OnlyFans, follow him, watch him, support him, because this is courageous. I have to say, this guy, you're not in the same financial position as I am, and you decided to speak up. And I think that's extremely courageous because you speak to the person. It doesn't matter if you are doing OnlyFans, the crew needed a voice because the crew is the every man and woman. And that everyone in the country can relate to. Someone who's living paycheck to paycheck, something happens, a strike happens, they literally can't feed their kids, they don't know what's going to happen to them, they think they're going to be evicted, and they're doing things they don't want to do. So you're speaking up for people that still are on shows right now that have to do that every day. So you're speaking up for them.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I've had many people who are working on shows with many of the showrunners that I reference in the video or allude to in the video who thanked me for speaking out,
Because they can't and they won't.
Right. Well, yeah, because they need to work, And that's like what 90% of the messages have been like, thank you for saying this. My God, so someone finally said this,
Wow, good.
Because like, it's not just like a singular problem. Like this is just happening on, Real Housewives of whatever.
Yes.
Or, this isn't on one show. This is across the board. I've heard from many colleagues that I've worked with and many people in the industry that I've never even met, and it's all the same thing. I think that a lot of these like incidents that happen could be corrected by having like standards and practices person present on set. I don't know what the term for it would be because it doesn't exist.
Like a COVID compliance person that was there making sure that things were
Exactly. It doesn't exist on these shows, so I don't even know what to call it. But there should be someone put there in place by the network or maybe a third party or something.
No, a
That
reality
you know what I
compliance
mean?
person. Yes, it's
Yeah,
like a COVID
yeah,
compliance person. I said this.
exactly. Just like making sure, hey, like, hey, cameraman, when was the last time you got a bathroom break? Hey, you need a, you know what I mean? You can either have peace and have a well balanced life, or you can be like a successful housewife. You know?
Exactly. So let's talk about the after effects, like, because I remember it takes months to years to get over having been during this experience. For me, it's like almost when you have a baby 6 months later, you still don't feel right. Like, you just live in a different reality. You think that it's normal and that it's what everybody goes through and that people care about it in the normal world, and then you realize like they don't. Like, it's like an X that I don't think of that often. Like, that's why when I saw your video I was like, oh wait, okay. So how does it affect the crew working in this environment physically and mentally? And how does it feel like a workplace? Have you worked on union shows and this is so markedly different? Like, what does it
I
feel
have.
like from the crew's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I spent 3 years working at CBS on like a live daytime television show. You know, I've worked on many movies and stuff before I got into reality. So I've worked in the scripted space and union space, where things are much more, you know, by the book and on the up and up. You know,
Okay.
I think that I'll speak specifically on these cash trips because I think those are the places where the most infractions and the most violations happen
Ah, okay.
because it's such a concentrated like pressure cooker.
I just did a video on TikTok saying these are the the trips are when you have to fit 25 pounds of emotional and dramatic shit in a 5-pound bag, and they've spent money and you better fucking make a meal out of it. They
Yeah.
need everything to pop off on the trip. It's the arc of the season. It gets you right into the reunion. And so it's a pressure cooker. That's what I've said. And that's why they liked on New York that we'd go just to the Berkshires or just to Miami because it costs nothing. And yet we'd still deliver the same disaster. That's what
Yeah.
my point of view is. So you're validating my point of view.
I mean, the pressures that are put upon the crews and producers are just insane. I spoke about this, you know, a lot of times, you know, on these cash trips, you'll go either like a week-long trip. There was a trip where I traveled 22 hours. Me and a group of crew members traveled 22 hours to an international location. You're changing planes, you're collecting gear, you're like communicating with your crew. You know what I mean? You're doing logistics, you're talking to the people that are already there. Like you're working, you know?
Yeah.
And then so we get to this location after having worked and traveled for 22 hours straight.
Jesus.
And we're told when we got to the hotel, we got a text that said, "Hello, welcome. Please drop your bags and get freshened up in your room and be back in the lobby within the hour for a day of scouting." So we were expected, although we had just finished working a 22-hour day,
Right.
we were expected to begin yet another 22-hour day without like a literal wink of sleep. So, I mean, and that's happened more than once on these shows.
Basically, you're saying that there should be a reasonable amount. I'm saying in a workplace, there are shifts. And you're saying that
Right.
people should be working in reasonable shifts.
People should be working in shifts, correct.
Okay.
So some shows did that. And I said this in the video. Vanderpump Rules, for example, was a show that staggered really well. That was a very well-run show by the showrunner, Jeremiah Smith. That's a
Okay.
testament to his leadership. He was always very, very aware of, you know, the needs of the crew, was very in touch with the needs of the crew.
Amazing.
Like a great
Shout
leader,
out.
right?
Shout out to Jeremiah Smith. Okay.
Yes. And there are some people, on the other hand, who run the trips like, you know, tyrants, you know?
Yeah.
They'll expect every producer to be at that cast villa or the cast rooms at like 7 or 8 a.m. to start shooting producer cam before the big cameras get up. So we're coming in on iPhones, shooting them waking up, you know what I mean, before the crews get up.
How many hours in a row are you working without sleep and food?
On
like
those trips, you're working like sometimes like 13, 14, 15-hour days at time, depending on your position. And then these loggers, then they'll work that shoot day and then they have to go back to their room and write a summary. So then they're writing for like 3 hours, you know, and then they have to be back at work in like 2 hours.
I had this experience on a show that I was on and my name was on. And there was a moment when I looked at the producer, I won't name her, there were two producers, and I said, is this legal? It was freezing. We had been working. It was 2:00 in the morning. They had jammed everything into this one location that we had to get done on this day. And like, the pivotal point hadn't been accomplished. And I said, is this legal? And they said, well, it's not union. It's not illegal, but it's not right. And I called up the head of the production company and was like, what? And it's one of them that you actually know. And I said, what the fuck? And I freaked out. And the next time I met with this entire crew, I said, I just want you guys to know that what that was. And the sound person quit. I was acutely aware of it was wrong. And somebody from your world too was working with me on it. And he was just used to it because he's used to what you're talking about. And I said to the crew, this will never happen again. My name cannot be on something that cannot be a reflection of me. Like, you just know when it's inhumane. And so you're speaking for the crew from the physical, the lack of breaks, lack of, of food.
Yeah, so then you're in these tropical locations, right? And sometimes the women's cast, the rooms can be like in different parts of these resorts, right? So they're very far away sometimes from each other. So you'll have a crew that's, carrying several heavy cameras, tons of equipment, lighting, all that.
You're just manual labor.
They're just firing you off to different places. And then they're like, nope, go back to Bethenny's room. And then we're headed there and they're like, what the hell? Why aren't you at Bethenny's room yet? We need to get this scene shot in 30 minutes, And it's like, well, they're carrying all the stuff to try to get it from the last move you made, And they're just and they're like, okay, well, I'm giving my cameraman like a water break because we just like walked 3 miles to get here. So like, we're going to need a second, There's no consideration to those kind of things. You know what I'm saying? They don't care. There are definitely no HR representatives on site on these trips. That's why I mentioned in the video, I think that Bravo should send someone from Human Resources, some kind of compliance officer to these trips to ensure that the cast, crew, and everyone involved are given their like adequate break times, are given rest. Everyone's being treated humanely and not being, forced to like sit on a hot boat for 4 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, this is what I said the first time around. I said there are no guardrails. There's no lifeguard. There's no principal in the office. It's just a free for all. And it's just a free for all. So what about and then the last thing I want to talk about is like, what about the mental health of the crew and how the crew feels about the subject matter, about the Porsche fight, about the Morocco Brandy Caroline incident, about the Shannon Bedour, about the Scary Island? Like, what is the crew's moral dilemma? Or are they just machines that are they don't, you know what I mean? Like,
I can speak to the Porsche fight. I mean, they were all extremely upset after that. They were like, this is so fucked up. Like, we can't work like this. We shouldn't be having to do this, And the real kicker for that was like, Porsche didn't even like acknowledge it, until she was like made to, like, because there was like a day went by and Porsche had said nothing to the crew or anything until they were like, you have to say something. She gave this like very, very, very quick little apology that she really clearly wanted to like breeze through.
Like, check the box.
Yeah. So they were very like put off by that. And yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, it's been late night at a trip, going back to do producer cam. Like, all right, we got to go back and get the ladies having fun in their rooms. And like, these ladies are so exhausted. A lot of times, like, they just traveled, 20 something hours to get there too. They haven't gotten a lot of rest. And I've literally had to tell them like, all right, ladies, I need everybody up dancing. Let's take some, let's like, who wants drinks? Let's get some drinks. Let's have some fun. Get the energy up here. You know what I mean? Because that's what we're told to tell them,
Does exhaustion help drama?
They're like tired. They're like all like dead. They're like, okay, then they get up and dance. It's like dance, pony, dance,
Is there any aspect of it where the exhaustion helps the drama, the alcohol helps the drama, like that production knows that, like they're tired, so they're going to do and say stupid shit?
1,000%. I think that the model of these trips to pack so much in to such a short amount of time, I think was designed to be very exhausting and very, I think they were designed to push people to their limits. You know what I mean? To push these cast members to their limits. These long days, long events where a lot of alcohol is happening. Yeah.
The residual aspect of that is the trips are designed to push people to their limits. So somebody has to be filming that. So the crew who's not making the same money, getting the same fame, having the same decisions, power, and relevance is experiencing the same exhaustion, but with no upside.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what you're saying. Because I'm trying to get to what overall this is for the crew. And that's what I've now, at the end of this interview, come to. You are basically saying that all of this drama that goes on that is making housewives cry, ruin their lives, the desperation, the circular reference, the crew is experiencing all of it and more because they're lugging equipment and having to capture it and have to stay in shitty hotel rooms, but they get none of the upside.
And can be replaced at a moment's notice without,
So it's all downside while you're watching these other people drive in Rolls Royces and you guys are there to produce. Yeah, it's very. I feel like I get it. I feel like I want to know if there's anything you have to say that you haven't said. They said that you got everything. One discussion has been NDAs because they've been loosely interpreted and sort of weaponized, theoretically, so no one can talk about their experience. And Bravo says, oh, the NDAs are not so someone doesn't discuss problems in the workplace. They're just to protect storyline. But cast members and crew members are scared that they're on a gag order and that they'll be sanctioned and punished if they talk because they're under NDA. But NDAs are not designed. So if someone has a Me Too incident or experiences something that is problematic in the workplace that you're not supposed to tell about it, NDAs are supposed to be for like proprietary information. Like don't give our recipe for the secret sauce or our...
Exactly.
So the NDA is a discussion. And have you been nervous about that you've probably signed an NDA along the way?
I'm not nervous about that because everything I've been saying is the truth, So while that may be a concern for some people, it's just not a concern of mine, quite frankly. I think that nothing changes if nothing changes. So, somebody's got to speak up and say these things. Somebody's got to bring these things to light from the point of view of the producers and the crew members that are seeing this, because nobody believes the housewife who's, been like spiraling out of control, who's been like, has this reputation of being difficult or being a slut or being stupid or being, whatever it is, whatever reason you don't like a Real Housewife for is a reason for you not to believe them when they come out and say, hey, I've been mistreated, So I don't care if you like somebody or not. I don't care if you agree with their lifestyle. I don't care if you agree with what they do. And I'm talking about people in front of the camera and I'm talking about people behind the camera. They should, that's just shouldn't happen. So it doesn't matter who the message is coming from. It's like, let's believe these people. Let's start believing some of these people. You know what I mean? Let's start looking at what some of these people are saying and maybe set aside your feelings about what they did in their storyline on their show and maybe like take into consideration, okay, maybe two things can be true at one time.
You are a great messenger. Like you actually are doing so much for the crew and for these women, because I, as a viewer, would be like Danielle Staub. But when she reached out to me and said, do you know how many times prostitution whore has been said on Watch What Happens Live, that it was at Bravo Con, that it was like played over and over? Like, it's like the girl who was promiscuous in high school or who slept with half the hockey team, but then is like abused, like fully abused, or physically abused, or becomes not a person anymore. That's the thing that I think is going on. It's all the girls that have made mistakes, done stupid things, said stupid things, drank too much, slept with too many people, worn, gotten many tattoos, look a certain way that people judge. These are the girls that I do think are also kind of discarded. So their message gets muddled. And I think that that's what you've just said. Like that you are the voice of those people. And that, I think, is something interesting. Does that make sense? That's the difference. Like,
yeah, it does. Because, those people have been like cast out, you know what I mean? So like a lot of the time, the viewership will turn on those people because they're not spoken up positively on the show anymore, whatever reason. It's like this thing where we're going to keep you here, we're going to keep you in a nice car, and we'll keep you, you know what I mean? But you're staying here.
Price.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
In the midst of hearing from all these people, I have also heard from cast members who are currently on shows that are going through this shit right now in real time, you know, reaching
Really?
out saying like, I'm going through this on my show right now for XYZ. So it's like, it's nothing has changed. You know what I mean?
No, a big one said it to me too. People reached out to me but then they got scared and they wouldn't say anything. And they like said publicly the opposite. And I got annoyed because I was like, no, now you're like, you called me or you reached out to me to say what I was doing is amazing. But then you got nervous and hid behind it. And when asked in the media what you thought and you like denounced it, but you called me privately, that has happened a lot. People have called
Mhm.
privately, but yeah, but that's their privacy.
Yeah.
Not,
Well,
yeah.
you understand. I understand because like you got to like make a
Hey,
living. You know what I
yeah,
mean? People, this is what's paying your bills. This is why none of the crew has been speaking out, is because this is paying their bills. You know what I'm
right.
saying? So I
Well,
also don't blame the crew, the cast members who don't want to speak publicly. Obviously, they have a job to keep. You know?
I think you can actually make a difference, and I'm going to connect you to people. Like there were conversations where SAG and AFTRA validated everything I was saying and saying that the door was open. The bridge was never linked, but we have contacts and respect there, and you could probably be instrumental in like helping production crews get the treatment they deserve. This also, I remember when I had this going on with The Reckoning, teachers were talking about it. Like, you know, plumbers were talking about it. People in other industries start to hear things that start in one industry. So I actually think you can make an impact because it's more, you know, it's more of a middle class uprising that you could represent that I obviously couldn't. I just want to thank you, Patrick. Have a great rest of your time in Thailand. Patrick is joining us from Thailand. It's the middle of the night. So go get some rest and breathe easy. I think you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you.
a
I
lot.
really
Good luck.
appreciate it.
Awesome.
All
Thanks.
right.